Now let's start to learn how to convert our log footage into Rec 709 for color grading, and how to check the bit depth of a video. So here I have an empty timeline. I'm gonna go ahead and drag a clip onto my timeline. And remember, I am on the edit page. To convert the log footage into Rec 709, I will go to the color page. When I go to the color page, as soon as I import my footage, it gives me one node to start off with. One very important thing that I want you to remember is that you always convert your footage from log to Rec 709 at the end of your node tree. What is a node tree? So a node tree is basically a bunch of nodes that you have done different things on, and combined it's called a node tree. So it's like a set of layers you have applied all of your color grading enhancements to. But I'm gonna go ahead and start with the first one. So I'm not gonna convert my log footage to Rec 709 first and then start color grading. Why? This is a very important thing to remember. This is going to be the first differentiating factor of whether you become a profound colorist or not. You'll find a lot of videos on the internet telling you that you have to convert your footage to Rec 709 in the very beginning. That is the wrong method. You always convert your footage at the end. You apply all of the settings, all of the enhancements before you convert your footage to Rec 709. Because if you convert your footage to Rec 709 in the beginning, that means you are not manipulating the colors and making enhancements on the log footage. That means you are making enhancements on a Rec 709 footage. That is not going to give you that dynamic range to manipulate colors, brightness, shadows, and everything. So what you do is you put all of your enhancements before the Rec 709 nodes. There are a couple of ways of doing it, and I will take you through each of the methods. So I'm gonna press Option S and create another node. I will drag that node to the very end of my node tree. And remember to label it, because you're not going to remember what setting you applied to which node if you don't label them, because there's going to be a lot of nodes as we progress through the course, and labeling the nodes is going to help you remember where you put each of the settings. So I'm going to call this CST, and we'll find out shortly what that means. So I have my node ready to use to convert my footage to Rec 709. So I'm going to go up to Effects and click on it. This is going to bring up a whole number of options for me, and we're going to keep using some of them and most of them throughout the course. But I will scroll down and I will look for Color Space Transform. This is the FX we use to convert our footage to Rec 709. Now, where is my node? Because I have all of these options displaying on my screen. So I'm using the magic mouse. So I'm gonna move my finger from the left to the right to find my node. And here I have my node that I labeled CST. I will click Color Space Transform and drag it onto the CST node. And when I'm on top of the CST node, I will release my mouse button. Now I have a whole set of options over here because Color Space Transform has been applied to my node. Color Space Transform, I took its initials and I abbreviated my node because this is going to remind me that this is my Color Space Transform node, in short CST. Color Space Transform is going to give you a bunch of options over here that you're going to use. It's asking me about my input color space. So I need to have the input information of the camera that was used to shoot this video because otherwise I wouldn't be able to convert my footage properly. This footage was filmed on a Blackmagic camera. So the input color space is going to be related to Blackmagic. In this case, it's going to be Blackmagic Design Wide Gamma Gen 4x5. You see there's already a little bit of change over here when I applied that option. The input gamma is going to be Blackmagic Design Film Generation 5. So you see already stuff is happening over here. The output color space is going to be Rec 709 because that is the output color space I want for my video to be in. I want my video to be in Rec 709 at the very end. And then it's going to ask me about the output gamma. My output gamma is going to be 2.4. So right now I have my footage converted into Rec 709. And one of the important things that I want to tell you about, and I will be going through this using S-Log and C-Log because they are much easier to understand because they are way more common than other cameras. And you will understand everything at a much better level as we progress through the course. The input color space and the input gamma are going to be the settings of your camera that was used to film the footage. Whenever I use my Sony FX3 to shoot footage, my input color space is Sony S Gamma 3 Cine, and my input gamma is S-Log3 because Sony FX3 uses S-Log3, Sony Log version number 3. And then I use the output color space Rec 709 and Gamma 2.4. So output color space is really easy, Rec 709, because that is the color space we want our footage to be in. What is Gamma 2.4? I'm going to give you a little bit of idea about that. So there are different types of gamma settings. If you go to the output gamma, you'll see a couple of options over here, 2.2, 2.4, 2.5, 2.6. There's a little bit of difference between all of them. So gamma can be described as how smoothly the black color transitions to a white color on a digital screen. Gammas are often associated with the numbers that I showed you. Gamma basically is the gamma curve that is applied to your footage when you're exporting it or when you're converting it from one color space to another. So right now we're converting our footage from log to Rec 709. So the kind of gamma setting you choose is going to affect how shadows, midtones, highlights are displayed on your screen, especially on different types of screens and in different environments. The input gamma tells DaVinci Resolve what kind of gamma curve your footage was shot in. Was it log? Was it film? Was it linear? And the output gamma tells DaVinci Resolve how your footage should be displayed after color grading it. This is usually for very specific platforms or screens. So we're not going to go into all of the science behind the gamma curve and everything because that is just going to take up so much of our time and we're not going to run into those details. Just remember that, for example, Gamma 2.2 is standard for web, mobile, and generally online content, which uses brighter screens. And Gamma 2.4 is standard for TV broadcast, home theaters, dimly lit environments. Now that we have converted our footage to Rec 709 properly, we're going to find out if our footage is 8-bit or 10-bit. On the color page, at the very right of your screen, somewhere close to the center, there's going to be this icon. This is called the info section. If you click it, this is going to display a number of values and things for you. If you look for info inside the clip section, you'll see that you can find out what the bit depth of your video is. So right now this tells me that my video is in 10-bit, and it can also tell me the frame rate of my video. So right now my video is 24 frames per second, and that's most of the information that I need to go ahead and start working on my project. I'm going to show you how to work with different scopes and how to read them. As we progress through the course, we're going to learn better ways of understanding what values to stay within when we're doing our color grading, so that we can have amazing results when we export our final video. Scopes help us understand what is happening to our footage, and they give us a better reading of things when we can't only rely on our eyes. So here I have my footage converted to Rec 709. Because I was working with the info section, I am by default sent to the info section. Now we're going to talk about scopes. So where are scopes? Scopes are right next to the info section, and this is the icon for it. So when you click it, it's going to bring you to different types of scopes. I want to start with the first scope. So how do I change my scopes? I will go up here where we have the name of the scope, and I will click it where it will give me a bunch of options to choose from. So I will go to Parade, and this is what Parade shows us. I mainly use Parade and Vector Scope. So I will start with Parade because that's going to give us a much better understanding of things. Remember we talked in the theory part of our course that our display is made up of 3 color channels: red, green, and blue. And when these are combined, they make up our entire image. This is exactly what's happening over here. We have different levels of red, green, and blue that are making up our image. We have the blue sky and the blue umbrella of our subject, as well as their outfit, and some parts of it are also blue. So naturally, we have more blue in our footage compared to the other 2 colors. First off, I would like to give you an understanding of highlights, midtones, and shadows. So highlights are the lightest areas of your footage. I want you to take a couple of seconds to identify which part of our footage is the lightest. That would be the clouds. The clouds are the lightest part of our footage. And now I want you to identify which part of our footage is the darkest. I would say the bottom of our subject's shoes, that's the darkest part. That part underneath their shirt, these parts of the umbrella, these lines, the handle of the umbrella, and a couple of areas in our subject's hair. These are the darkest parts. So the lightest parts of our footage are going to be called highlights, and the darkest parts are going to be called the shadows. And things that are in between them are going to be midtones. Basically, they are midway between highlights and shadows. So my midtones are going to be this part of the umbrella, my subject's face, the subject's pants, and so on and so forth. When we're color grading, we want our highlights and shadows and everything else to remain within certain values. If they go beyond those values, that's when our footage starts getting damaged. Remember, color grading is a process that is done in layers. Every layer sits on top of the previous one, and eventually you have a fully color graded video that is made up of all of the steps that were done in the right manner. This is one of the starting points. So, in the parade, how do we find out what our highlights are and what our shadows are? I want you to see very closely. I'm going to take my dropper. I'm gonna point at the highlights and shadows and everything, and we're gonna find out. 0 is pure black. This is where our shadows are going to lie. And then 896 and above is pure white. Our highlights are supposed to stay around 896 generally. If they go beyond that point, we're going to start losing information in our footage. So notice when I hover over the shadows, the area where we identified our shadows to be, look at the parade. Look where it's showing me the R, G, and B values. It's very close to 0. So this is telling me this is where our shadows lie. Then I'm gonna go to the white parts, which is the clouds, and look where it's indicating on the parade. It's at the very top. So this is telling me these are my highlights. And then I'm gonna go to midtones. So see where my values are being indicated on the parade? This is where my midtones are. I'm gonna point towards my subject's pants. See, it's closer to the shadows because I was hovering over the shadows, but see, this is closer to the shadows because it's darker, but it's still midtones. If I hover over the umbrella, that's also somewhere around there. If I hover over the subject's face, that's also in the midtones mostly. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that your shadows are not going beyond 0. How do I make sure that they are not going beyond 0? Right now, I only want you to focus on understanding the scopes because I will teach you all of the other methods in the upcoming lessons. So I'll go to the first node because I want to make a couple of changes. I will go to the color wheels and offset, just like I told you before, it controls the overall lighting of your footage. So I'm gonna bring it down and see what's happening. My shadows and even my midtones are going beyond 0. That means a lot of the information is getting lost. So if you look over here, do you see how so much information is getting lost? Between, like, we can't even tell where the subject's shoe ends and where does the pants start. The hair is kind of completely black and merging with the lines of the umbrella. So this is what we mean when we say clipping of shadows. Whenever your shadows are going beyond 0.0, your shadows are clipping. You don't want that. The sky looks okay, but everything else is completely out of place. So how do I reverse it? I will go to my node where I made the changes. I will press right click, click on reset node grade. It will bring everything else back to its place and how it originally was. I have recovered my original settings, so I can go ahead. So you have to remember your shadows. Your shadows are indicated by the bottom part of the colors in your parade, and they're supposed to be closer to 0. If your shadows are up here, that means your footage is also messed up. How do I find that out? I'm gonna do the opposite of what I did. I'm gonna go to offset and I'm gonna bump up the settings. Do you see what's happening? My shadows are far away from 0 and my highlights are going beyond 896. When my highlights go beyond 896, that means my highlights are being clipped. What does clipping mean? When your highlights or your shadows are being clipped, that means information is being lost. So if you look at the image, if you look at the footage, a lot of the information in the highlights is now being lost. We can't differentiate between the highlights and the midtones. Look at the umbrella, how dark it was before and what it looks like right now. So we're gonna go reset it, and you're going to remember that your highlights are supposed to stay around 896 and your shadows are supposed to stay around 0. They're not supposed to go beyond these levels. If they go beyond these levels under normal circumstances, then you're going to have some problems with the footage. There are times where your readings are going to go beyond those values, and that is if you shoot in a very bright environment like this, or if you shoot in a very dark environment. And we're going to go through all of the details as we progress, because we're going to work with different types of footage that were shot indoors, outdoors, on a rainy day, on a sunny day, all kinds of things. So I'm going to take you through all of these readings. So right now, my highlights are going beyond and above 896, which is why they appear really bright compared to everything else. So how do I fix it? How do I fix the overall setting? I have the first node selected because remember, you have to make all of the changes before the color space transform node. So make sure that I do it over here and not over here. This is going to be wrong. I'm going to make all of my changes over here. So remember, you're going to have to make all of your changes before the CST node, not after, because that is wrong. And we have studied that in the previous lectures. While I have this node selected, I am going to go click on offset and bring it down just a little bit. I want to make sure that my shadows are not going beyond 0. So if you zoom in, you'll see so if you look closely, you'll see it's going very close to 0, but it's not going beyond it. That way I know my shadows are not being clipped. And my highlights are slightly above 896. Not too much like before. So if I want to turn off the settings and see what my image looked before, I will simply come to this part of the node and click with my mouse button. It's going to turn off my node. I can also press Command D and turn on or turn off the node. This is what it looked like before I did anything. This is what it looks like after retouching it a little bit. Okay, so I hope you have a better understanding of highlights, midtones, and shadows and how we read them on the scopes. If you have any questions, please send them to me, and I will see you in the next lesson.